but it's hard. And it's lonely. It's very lonely. I just know that if that loneliness can exist, so can other things, and I will be okay.
Next story is Snow White. Snow White bombs, breaks records for the lowest live-action remake opening ever. Let me say that again, ever. Okay, this is Snow White. And for those of you that have daughters or ladies that are listening to this, remember the first time you watched Snow White, the story, a love story, what happens to it? Snow White starring Rachel Zegler opened to a dismal $43 million, snagging the title of the lowest debut weekend for any Disney live-action remake, beating 2019's Dumbo at $46 million. They beat Dumbo. Shame on you, but it's for the worst ever.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird. We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because, like, we cast a guy in the movie. Right. Andrew Burnap, great dude. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
Go vote blue. And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button.
I had no idea what I was auditioning for when I auditioned. So it's a kind of a hilarious question to say, like, what drew you to the material? Is that, like, I didn't realize that I was reading lines with Dopey. It said, like, Jeff and Amy were reading lines. And then our director, Mark Webb, on Zoom was like, you know, and then Dopey's gonna look at you and whistle. And I took a pause and realized what I was auditioning for. And then it became like, I will elbow everyone out of the way to play the part.
If I'm gonna stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
Disney had high hopes for its Snow White remake. This was supposed to be the next billion-dollar blockbuster. You know, the kind of movie that breaks records. But instead, it turned into one of the biggest flops Hollywood's seen in a while. And right at the center of the storm was Rachel Zegler, the film's lead. So what went down and how did Rachel react to this new snowstorm on her way? Let's break it all down. Things started going downhill when Rachel spoke about how different this version of Snow White was going to be. She made it clear that this wasn't the 1937 story people grew up with. In this retelling, Snow White wasn't waiting for a prince to save her. The idea was to modernize the character and give her more independence. While that message might have landed differently in other contexts, to many fans it came off as dismissive of the original, and that's when the backlash started picking up steam.
I never want it to come off as me being ungrateful for the opportunities I have. I can also be having the greatest time and simultaneously wishing people would stop.
Play the clip and tell folks, if you watch this, tell me if this is attractive to you. Tell me if this is attractive to you. Like, does this, imagine you invested into her being the face of the movie and she's the main character and she's trying to promote the movie. Would this make you want to go watch the movie when she's starring in it and she's the main character? Go ahead, Rob, play the clip.
And to everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. And I can only hope that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them,
She's a good actress.
that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
Wow.
The ego on this girl is ridiculous.
Wow.
Have you ever been to that Snow White ride at Disneyland?
I get stopped for photos every time I'm online for the Snow White ride, and it is I have to pretend like, oh God, well, crazy that we're in front of this.
Wait, how often are you in line for the Snow White ride?
I'm a narcissist.
Every time she speaks, she gets less likable. There's some clip of her on the internet in her Snow White outfit saying, every hour I am in the outfit of Snow White wearing the dress. All 18 hours, I deserve to be paid for every single one. Oh, really? Are you having trouble paying your bills, Rachel? Did Steven Spielberg not pay you for your role in West Side Story? Did Disney fail to give you a healthy paycheck for, like, cry me a river? She's just exactly everything that we can't stand.
The cartoon was made 85 years ago, and therefore it's extremely dated when it comes to the ideas of women being in roles of power and what a woman is fit for in the world. And so when we came to reimagining the actual role of Snow White, it became about the fairest of them all, meaning
Snow White bombs, breaks records for the lowest live-action remake opening ever. Let me say that again. Ever.
As the criticism rolled in, Rachel tried to respond. In a now viral video she filmed in what looked like her bedroom, She talked directly to her audience. She looked frustrated but was trying to stay composed, saying that even though a lot of hate was coming her way, people still showed up to support her work. Her tone bounced between emotional and slightly defensive, as she addressed everything from the backlash to the negativity surrounding the film's announcement. It was clear she wanted to be heard, but her words didn't land the way she probably hoped. In that clip, she compared herself to the winged victory statue in the Louvre, saying that even though it was in pieces, people still lined up to see it. She hoped that, like the statue, people would show up for her despite her flaws and cracks. It was a bold comparison, and one that didn't go over well with audiences.
And to everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her.
Rachel was clearly trying to reclaim her story and remind people she had value behind the hate, but the internet wasn't having any of it. Almost instantly, her video was all over TikTok, stitched and re-edited into reaction content. Some people were confused. Others turned her comments into memes and skits, mocking what they saw as overconfidence or self-importance. And then Twitter, now called X, took things even further. The site lit up with criticism, jokes, and more memes. What might have been a chance for a comeback ended up handing her critics even more ammunition. Instead of getting a redemption arc, Rachel unintentionally made herself the main character in one of Hollywood's most dramatic public spirals.
But it's hard. And it's lonely. It's very lonely. I just know that if that loneliness can exist, so can other things, and I will be okay.
The backlash against Rachel Zegler didn't come out of nowhere. It had been building for a while. Ever since Disney started dropping details about its Snow White remake, people had mixed feelings. A lot of longtime Disney fans were confused by how much the studio was changing the original. Remember, the 1937 Snow White wasn't just any movie. It was the first full-length animated film in history. So yeah, people felt pretty protective of it.
A new trailer is out for Snow White, and if you thought that Disney was going to salvage this film after all the backlash that it received about the direction it was going in remaking the 1937 classic, you were wrong. And then we got photos of what was going on with Snow White during filming, and we got a look at the 7 dwarves, except they weren't the 7 dwarves anymore. They were the 7 magical creatures, or as I like to refer to them, the 7 magical diversity hires. And if you thought that somehow in this new editing process, Disney was going to be able to make a cut that was less feminist girl boss, I don't think they did, because a clip of the Whistle While You Work song that is featured in Snow White has been released and compared to the 1937 version. Let's listen to it.
Now you wash the dishes.
Now you wash the dishes.
You tidy up the room.
You tidy up the room.
You clean the fireplace.
You clean those cobwebs.
And I'll use the broom.
And he'll use the broom.
When Disney announced that they were getting rid of the love story and focusing more on themes like female leadership, the debate started immediately. Some thought it was a bold move, but others felt like they were completely rewriting the heart of the story. But what really turned the heat up wasn't the changes themselves, it was what Rachel Zegler said about them.
You had Rachel Zegler on the docket too. I think actresses should be quiet.
I understand
She's
why.
such an
asshole. That's number one.
You called her a pig?
She's a pig. I know, I'm harsh, but sometimes I really
She's
get
a young girl.
Oh, her.
We've called people slam pigs, so.
There we go. I know, she's dumb. She's young and she's dumb. But maybe she'll learn. You know what? Whatever I called her, it worked. She's had a long history of saying woke, annoying things. Our new Snow White.
Old interview clips started popping up where Rachel laughed about the original Snow White, calling it weird and creepy. She even joked about how the prince in the story was basically stalking Snow White. In another interview, she explained that her version of the character wasn't going to dream about true love or wait for a prince to save her. Instead, the new Snow White would be a strong leader.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There is a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird. We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because we cast a guy in the movie. Right. Andrew Burnap, great dude. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
Now, that message might have worked if it had been delivered differently, but to many viewers, it didn't sound like a modern update. It sounded like she was trashing a childhood classic. Instead of being excited about a fresh take, a lot of people felt like Rachel was talking down to them, almost making fun of a story that meant a lot to generations of fans. And it wasn't just internet trolls or random critics jumping in. Regular Disney fans, families, and even people who didn't usually follow this kind of drama started speaking out. To them, it felt like Rachel came off as arrogant and dismissive. Soon, social media was flooded with memes and side-by-side comparisons. People were posting clips from the original movie next to Rachel's interviews, showing just how different the tone was. Her past statements were being shared everywhere, alongside predictions that the movie was going to flop. The internet wasn't just upset, it was in full-on roast mode. And like always, the internet never forgets. Unfortunately for Rachel, her comments aged badly. Really badly.
I was scared of the original cartoon. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. Like, I'm being so serious. I watched it once and then I went on the ride in Disney World, which was called Snow White's Scary Adventures. Doesn't sound like something a little kid would like. Was terrified of it. Never revisited Snow White again. So I watched it for the first time in probably 16, 17 years. When I was doing this film. I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
So no Prince or a different kind of Prince?
We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because, like, we cast a guy in the movie. Right. Andrew Burnap, great dude. Yeah. It's one of those things that I think everyone's going to have their assumptions about what it's actually going to be, but it's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
Then came the numbers, and they weren't pretty. The writing was on the wall. Snow White had a massive budget, reportedly around $250 million for the production alone. Even for Disney, that's a huge amount. But when the opening weekend numbers dropped, reality hit hard. The movie only brought in $43 million at the domestic box office. That's not just a slow start. That's a straight-up flop.
Next story is Snow White. Snow White bombs, breaks records for the lowest live-action remake opening ever. Let me say that again, ever. Okay, this is Snow White. And for those of you that have daughters or ladies that are listening to this, remember the first time you watched Snow White, the story, the love story, what happens to it? Snow White starring Rachel Zegler opened to a dismal $43 million, snagging the title of the lowest debut weekend for any Disney live-action remake, beating 2019's Dumbo at $46 million. They beat Dumbo. Shame on you, but it's for the worst ever.
For comparison, The Little Mermaid, which also had its share of online drama, still managed to make $95 million during its opening weekend. The difference between the two was shocking. Box office experts were floored. Some called it Disney's biggest mistake in years. Others didn't hold back and flat out said it was a total disaster. Theaters responded fast. Many started pulling Snow White from their biggest screens and replaced it with other movies that were doing better. Within days, it was pushed to smaller time slots. And in some places, it disappeared from theaters completely by its second week. For Disney, a company used to dominating the box office with its remakes, this was new territory. Then came the infamous video from an empty movie theater. Rachel filmed herself sitting alone, laughing and showing off her face to the camera.
It sounds like you're one of the only ones there, just like Rachel Zegler, as it turns out, and we part with this video of Rachel Zegler alone in a theater watching herself. One of the most unlikable humans
That
ever.
is sadder than when the original Snow White eats the apple.
Films like Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and The Lion King had packed theaters, but this time it was different. People weren't just skipping the movie, they were rejecting it. And once the flop was confirmed, the internet did what it does best. It dug up receipts. Old interview clips, awkward sound bites, every controversial thing Rachel Zegler had said started making the rounds again. One moment in particular stood out. In a past interview, Rachel said that if she was going to spend 18 hours a day wearing a princess dress, she believed she deserved to be paid for every single hour the movie was streamed online.
If I'm going to stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
Every time she speaks, she gets less likable. There's some clip of her on the internet in her Snow White outfit saying, "Every hour I am in the outfit of Snow White wearing the dress. All 18 hours, I deserve to be paid for every single one." Oh, really? Are you having trouble paying your bills, Rachel? Did Steven Spielberg not pay you for your role in West Side Story? Did Disney fail to give you a healthy paycheck for, like, cry me a river? She's just exactly everything that we can't stand.
What was probably meant to highlight fair pay in Hollywood didn't come across that way at all. Instead, people saw it as entitled, like she thought she was bigger than the film itself. At this point, it wasn't just about Rachel anymore. Her comments and everything surrounding the movie started representing something bigger. Fans weren't only mad about one movie. They were frustrated with how Hollywood kept changing classic stories, turning beloved films into reboots that felt disconnected from what made them magical in the first place. Even Gal Gadot, who played the evil queen, seemed to be quietly stepping back. During the Snow White press tour, it became more and more obvious that Gal was keeping her distance, not just from the movie, but from Rachel too. While Rachel was in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons, Gal stayed quiet, composed, and far away from the drama. At first, people didn't think too much of it. Some figured the lack of chemistry between Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot was just a case of different personalities and nothing more. But the more interviews and the more red carpet clips that came out, the more it became obvious that Gal was keeping a careful distance from the chaos surrounding the film.
I never want it to come off as me being ungrateful for the opportunities I have. I can also be having the greatest time and simultaneously wishing people would stop sending me death threats.
Every time that a celebrity gets like one DM that says KYS, they're like, I'm getting death threats! Someone save me, but not a prince! Don't
anybody but a prince.
Don't you dare save me.
She like when somebody she's like I'm getting these death threats and the cops were like, well, save yourself. Like,
yeah, you're a girl
I saw that.
boss, aren't you?
I saw that interview. Save yourself. You'll be fine.
Rachel was all in on promoting the movie's modern twist. She wasn't shy about saying this Snow White would be different. No prince, no fairy tale romance, just a strong independent lead. Gal, on the other hand, took a very different approach. She didn't make any bold statements. Instead, she kept her comments safe and simple, talking about how excited she was to play a famous villain and how cool the visuals were. She never directly criticized the original film. Instead, she described this version as a fresh take and left it at that.
God, I hope no one, because every time they come up to me, I'm always online for this frickin' ride, and they think it's like I'm standing there waiting for the photo op, being like,
well, you kind of are, you know?
No, I guess
like
so.
if Harrison Ford's not standing outside of Indiana Jones going, hey, everybody, want to twist the rope?
Yeah, you want to touch my hat? Like...
This difference between the two actresses really stood out during their joint interviews. While Rachel confidently dropped hot takes, Gal would smile, nod, and stay quiet. It felt like she was choosing every word carefully, fully aware that saying the wrong thing could blow up online. She clearly didn't want to be dragged into the backlash Rachel was getting. And then came the Oscars. The moment they stepped on stage together to present an award, the tension was obvious. Fans picked up on it instantly. Unlike other co-stars who laugh together or show off their friendship, Gal seemed distant. She looked elegant and composed like she always does. But there was no playful banter, no friendly glances, no interaction at all beyond what was necessary.
Please welcome Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot.
Visual effects push the boundaries of what we see on screen.
Their work makes the impossible seem possible.
With breathtaking ambition, they create magic that wraps its arms around our wildest imaginations.
Here are the nominees for Best Visual Effects.
It didn't take long for body language expert and the internet to start analyzing every second of their appearance. One moment really stood out. Rachel leaned slightly towards Gal during their time on stage, and Gal responded by subtly shifting her body away. That tiny gesture said a lot. Some viewers took it as a clear sign that Gal didn't want to be too closely tied to Rachel, especially after everything that had happened online. Others thought it was just classic Hollywood damage control. Gal playing it smart, protecting her image while letting Rachel deal with the fallout. After the Oscars, Gal Gadot didn't miss a beat. She kept landing big roles and stayed on track as one of Hollywood's reliable stars. Meanwhile, Rachel Zegler's path started looking a lot less certain. The difference between the two actresses couldn't have been more obvious. Gal knew how to navigate the spotlight without getting caught in the drama. Rachel, on the other hand, had walked into a full-blown PR mess. It was one of those moments that said a lot without needing much explanation. Even from the outside, you could tell that some people involved in the film were quietly stepping back, maybe already sensing things were going downhill. And the backlash wasn't just internet noise. It hit Rachel where it hurt. Behind the scenes, insiders started whispering that studios were rethinking her future projects. Suddenly, executives weren't so sure if she was still worth the risk. Was she still a star that they could count on to bring in audiences? In Hollywood, how you're seen matters just as much as talent. Rachel had once been seen as the next big thing, especially after her performance in West Side Story. But now, she was starting to look like a cautionary tale. What was supposed to be her big breakout role, the one that would take her to the next level, ended up damaging her public image. Her take on Snow White didn't feel fresh or empowering to many fans. Instead, it came off as dismissive. What some saw as confidence, others saw as arrogance. And her attempt to take control of the narrative didn't work. It totally backfired. Some stars have been in hot water before, and they still made comebacks, but they usually win people back with a sincere apology or by showing a little humility. Rachel hasn't done that. So far, she stood her ground, clapped back, and kept the same energy, defensive and defiant. And with every move she makes, it feels like her chances of bouncing back are slipping away. Some people are already calling it. The girl who was supposed to lead Disney's next big thing might have just become one of the most memorable flops in recent Hollywood history.
Can we spend 1 minute on Snow White and how it totally imploded at the box office this weekend? It was so delicious. The thing they spent $170 million to make the thing, and it had the lowest opening, under $50 million, of any of these live action Disney remakes that they've ever had. Even the one that was their worst, Dumbo, did better than this has done. And they postponed the release of this thing, Ben, for a year because their star, Rachel Zegler, was so unlikable, told all Trump supporters that they could f*** off, excuse me, but she did. That was just in November. They didn't even know she was going to do that one. Said she hated Snow White, mocked the fact that there was a prince and that she falls in love as opposed to leaning into her own power. We could go on.
And not because of a single bad movie, but because of the choices she made when the world was watching. Mark Webb's Snow White opened with just $43 million in the US, missing its already low projections of $50 million. And let's be honest, even $50 million wouldn't have been great considering the film reportedly cost over $250 million to make. Things didn't go any better overseas, with only $44.3 million brought in globally for a weak $87.3 million start. That's well below the $100 million mark that Disney was hoping for. So what happened? Has Disney's remake magic finally worn off? Is there any hope for this movie moving forward? Let's break down why Snow White had such a rough debut. Audiences just didn't care. Critics might influence a film's reputation, but it's the viewers who really decide what lives or dies at the box office. And in this case, people just didn't care. The critical response was lukewarm, and audiences responded with a collective, meh. These days, especially post-pandemic, a movie needs more than meh to convince people to head to the theater. And so far, there's no sign that word of mouth is going to help.
First of all, a few lessons for Disney. Number one, stop cannibalizing all your old IP. Like, it's really bad. It's really bad business. Number two, please stop changing all of the historic plots, which actually have meaning to generations of people, to instead become generic woke story about how woman leads revolutionary uprising and she don't need no man. Because guess what? Nobody grew up with that crap and nobody's all that interested in it. You're a very successful woman. My wife is a doctor. I have no problem with this, with women in the workplace, but this idea that women don't need men is ridiculous on its face. It's terrible for society. It's very good for people to learn that women need men and also that men need women. I don't know why this fell out of fashion and we're not allowed to just say that sort of stuff anymore, but it actually happens to be the truth. And then beyond that, all these studios have to stop letting their actors loose. I mean, honestly, just shut your actors up.
The movie was just too expensive. This one's simple. Snow White cost way too much. Ballooning budgets have been a problem for a while now, especially for franchise movies, and this one got hit hard. Between delays, reshoots, and a production that wrapped more than 2 years ago, costs just piled up behind the scenes. Compare that to 2015's Cinderella, which had a $95 million budget and still looked great. And it ended up making $542 million worldwide. That film had critic support and didn't need to earn a fortune to make a profit. Meanwhile, Snow White would likely need around $600 million just to break even. And at this pace, it's nowhere close. Controversy didn't help Snow White one bit. The controversy surrounding Snow White definitely didn't do the movie any favors. There's always some debate about whether online drama really affects a film's performance at the box office. But in this case, it's hard to believe it didn't play a part. From the very beginning, things were rocky. The casting of Rachel Zegler as Snow White sparked a wave of backlash in certain corners of the internet, and some of it got pretty toxic. And that was just the beginning. On top of that, both Rachel and Gal Gadot had been outspoken about political issues in the past, which stirred up even more conversation. Whether it was fair or not, it added more heat to an already sensitive situation. Then there was actor Peter Dinklage, who spoke out against the portrayal of the dwarfs in the film. His comments drew attention to how Disney was handling the story, and once again, the internet had a lot to say about it.
Because right now there's more dwarves on this podcast than there are in the new Snow White movie. And that's probably due to Peter Dinklage.
Yep.
Me.
Literally no offense to anything. They're very proud to cast a Latino actress as Snow White. It makes no sense to me. You're progressive in one way, but you're still making that backward story of 7 dwarves living in a cave. What the are you doing, man?
At one point, things got so loud that rumors started spreading online in late 2023, claiming Disney might scrap the movie entirely. Of course, that wasn't true, but the fact that people even believed it says a lot about the level of negativity surrounding the project. It felt like the film was always in the middle of some kind of PR mess. By the time the press tour came around, you could tell Disney was being extra cautious. The promotion felt quiet and toned down. Only a handful of media outlets were invited to the premiere, and there wasn't the same kind of hype you'd expect from a major Disney release. It honestly seemed like the studio knew they had something fragile on their hands. And when you're trying to sell a movie to a mainstream audience, all that behind-the-scenes drama can really make the job harder. Snow White isn't The Lion King or The Little Mermaid. Let's be real, Snow White was never going to be The Lion King or The Little Mermaid. Disney has been cashing in on live-action remakes for over a decade now, starting with Alice in Wonderland, which made $1 billion. But here's the thing, not all remakes are built the same. Movies like Pinocchio and Dumbo didn't exactly light up the box office, while 90s hits like Aladdin and The Lion King were massive global successes. Jon Favreau's version of The Lion King even made over $1.6 billion. As for Snow White, it's going to land much closer to Dumbo, which topped out at around $352 million. And even The Little Mermaid remake, which had its own drama, opened with a solid $118 million and ended up making $569 million worldwide. It wasn't considered a hit only because its budget was huge, but still it proved that late 80s and 90s Disney movies have nostalgic power. Snow White, on the other hand, came out way back in 1937. Yes, it's a classic and super important to film history, but that doesn't mean it was the best choice for a modern remake, especially when the final product didn't wow critics.
Snow White bombs, breaks records for the lowest live-action remake opening ever. Let me say that again. Ever.
That was the budget before promotion was $270.
Okay.
The promotion budget I just read was $230.
So $500 million.
Correct.
$500 million?
Approximately $500 million in total.
The review, by the way, 43% on Rotten Tomatoes. Umberto sent me this. 1.9 out of 10 on IMDb. And those, by the way, they weren't dwarfs. They were called bandits. So the Snow White doesn't, like, the amount of, like, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. Leave it the alone. Yeah, that's it. If it ain't broke, break it. Like, leave these stories alone. If she, by the way, if she never opened her mouth and she didn't do all this nonsense, people would have gone and watched the movie. They would have made their money, but then people would have been disappointed after the math.
Disney's not going to stop making these remakes anytime soon, but if they're going to dip into their older catalog, they've got to absolutely nail it. A just okay movie might work for something like Aladdin or Mufasa, but with Golden Age titles like Snow White, okay simply won't cut it. Viewing habits have changed, and that's impossible to ignore. Now let's talk about how much moviegoing has changed. Ever since the pandemic shut down theaters, things haven't bounced back the way people expected. The rise of streaming, on-demand options, and affordable home theater techs mean fewer people feel the need to rush out to the movies anymore. Box office numbers in 2025 are already lagging behind 2024, and that was already lower than 2023. It's a steady decline, and the days of guaranteed hits are basically over. There's no easy fix here, but Snow White is now part of that bigger conversation. It's not just a flop, it's a reflection of how everything is shifting in the movie industry. So here's the real question. Can Rachel Zegler bounce back from this and rebuild her career? Or has she officially closed the door on her Disney future? Will Hollywood give her another shot? Or is this the start of a long freeze-out? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're into deep dives on celebrities, scandals, and Hollywood drama, then go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. We've got plenty more coming your way.